rainy, kind of a little bit of a lightning and thundery kind of a Friday evening. Welcome to Houston, Texas, and Beth Yeshurun. We're going to begin our service this evening with a nigun. Please rise now as we bless the Sabbath candles.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav Vitzivanu lehadlik ner Vitzivanu lehadlik ner Vitzivanu lehadlik ner Shel Shabbat Amen.
You may be seated. And now we welcome the Sabbath angels with Shalom Aleichem, page 5.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Let us go sing to God, Lechu Neranana, page 11.
Lechu neranena,
Lechu Neranana, Lechu
neranena,
Ladonai, Lechu Neranana, Lechu Neranana, Lechu Neranana, Ladonai. Naria, Naria, Letzur Yishenu,
Likadma
Fanav V'Todah. Naria, Naria. heavens shall join us rejoicing. Yismechu Hashemayim, page 14. Yismechu Hashemayim, Yismechu Hashemayim, Yismechu Hashemayim, B'tagel haaretz. Yismechu Hashemayim, Yismechu Hashemayim, Yismechu Hashemayim, B'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umlo. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umlo. Yismechu Hashemayim, Yismechu Hashemayim, Yismechu Hashemayim, B'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umlo. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umlo. And now we welcome the Sabbath bride herself, Lecha Dodi, page 23. Lecha Dodi, lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi, lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad, Yishiyanu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, L'Shem ultiferet, Belitila, Belitila. Lecha Dodi, lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi, lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Likrat Shabbat lechuven el chakim mekor habracha. Berosh mikerem nesucha sof maaseh b'machshava tehila. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Shalom ateret ba'ala, gam b'simcha u'betzola, tov emunei am segula, boi kala, boi kala. Lecha Dodi, lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi, lekrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. You may be seated. Now we welcome those who are in mourning, and we offer the words of comfort from our tradition to those who are in mourning. Hamakom yenetchem etchem b'toch shar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God's presence bring you comfort amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. To those who are mourning and those observing a yard site, we'll now recite the Mourner's Kaddish, page 30. Yit kadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, v'yalma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agalau v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach li'alam li'almei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'reichu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiron v'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. We now ask everyone to rise for Baruch Hu, page 39.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam ha'ed.
You may be seated. We'll continue with Ahavat Olam, page 40.
Ahavat Olam,
Beit Yisrael, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Havtat Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadata. Adonai Eloheinu, Bishrabeinu, Kumenu, Nasiach, Nasiach, Nasiach Bechukecha,
Ahavat
Olam, Beit Yisrael, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Havtat Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadata.
Nisbach b'divrei
Toratecha u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed,
Ki hem chayenu
ve'yorech yameinu, u'bahem negei yomam v'layla, Ahavata, v'ahavata, tasir mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai Omev Amo Yisrael. Page 41.
Shema
Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Ve'ahavta
et Adonai Elohecha, bechol levavecha, uvechol nafshecha, uvechol meodecha, vehayu hadvarim ha'eleh, asher anochi mitzavecha, hayom al levavecha, vishinantam levanecha, v'dibarta ba'am, b'shivtecha b'veitecha, u'lechtecha b'derech, u'shachpecha u'kumecha, u'kshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot beinenecha, u'chtaftam al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha. We continue silently in Hebrew or English to the bottom of page 42.
Adonai lechem emet.
Emet. And now we sing the song that our ancestors sang when they crossed the Red Sea and were finally free from Egyptian slavery. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, who is like you, God, among the mighty. Page 44. Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar v'kodesh no ra, no ra, no ra tehilot, oh say. ba'elim Adonai. Kamot hanedar b'kodesh no ra tehilot osef elem. Kamot ba'elim Adonai. Kamot hanedar b'kodesh no ra tehilot osef elem. Adonai imlok leolam va'ed. Adonai imlok leolam va'ed. Michamocha ba'elim Adonai. Michamocha nehedar b'kodesh no ra tehilot osef elem. Osef elem. Osef elem. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. Help us, God, to lie down in peace tonight and waken us tomorrow to life renewed. Page 45.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu
Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Ushmor v'seitenu uvoenu l'chaim v'shalom me'ata v'ad olam. V'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Now the children of Israel will keep the Sabbath for all generations. It's a sign of our relationship between us and God. Vishamru, page 46. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. Sod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. Masod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam.
Beinu bein b'nei Yisrael oti
leolam, oti leolam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. Lasod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. Asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Uvayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash. Shabbat vayinafash. Shabbat vayinafash. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Please rise for Chatzi Kaddish, the bottom of the page. Gadol Alma Divrach Irute V'yam Lit Mavlute V'chayechon Uvyom Echon Uv'chaye Lechol Beit Yisrael Agalav Izman Kariv Ve'yimeru Amen Agalav Izman Kariv Ve'yimeru Amen Amen Yeshmei Rabbah Mivorach Le'olam Le'olmei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitzmar V'yitromam V'yinaseh V'yithadar V'yitale V'yithala Shemei Dekudesha B'richu Le'elamin Kol Birkatam V'shiratam V'nechematan Damiron V'yama V'yimeru Amen V'yimeru Amen V'yimeru Amen V'yimeru Amen Amen. We pray now the silent Amidah from pages 47 to 52 in Hebrew or English.
Shalom
Hava Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rahav Al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Ki Atahu Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom Ki Atahu Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom Shalom Rahav Al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rahav Al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Be'einecha levarech the middle two lines on page 52.
Oh,
Say shalom, say shalom bimromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, shalom aleinu, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, amen. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, amen. Yaseh shalom aleinu,
Shalom
aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Oh, say shalom, oh, say shalom bimromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, shalom aleinu,
Aleinu
v'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, amen.
Aleinu
V'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, amen. Amen. Now that we've sung two prayers for peace, we have a special prayer for those in need of special healing, special strength. A Misha Berach prayer on the inside back cover of our prayer books. Source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing for us and all of those we love. Those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. May God grant a special healing to those in our congregation, their family and friends who are in need of strength and courage. And let us say, Amen. And we may be seated now, and we'll continue with Kaddish Shalem, page 54.
Yikadav Yikadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yamadi v'achiruteh, v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechonu v'mechonu v'yilcho v'Yisrael, v'agalav v'zman kari v'yimeru.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevorach,
Le'olam
Le'omei Amaya,
Yitbarach yishtabach yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalem v'yitalal, Shemei dekudeshav
Richu,
Leila mikol birchata v'shirata, tishbechata v'nechemata,
Damran Le'oma v'yimeru. Amen.
Tikabel sod hodu barchon d'cho Yisrael, kodamu v'hon d'vishmaya, v'yimeru.
Amen.
Yehi shlam arava min shemaya, v'chayim alini v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimeru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'himroma, uyaseh shalom, aleini v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimeru. Amen.
Okay. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. My sister-in-law, Diane's twin sister, Linda, visited us for a week this summer. It was really nice to see her. I'm sure many of you have had similar experiences this summer. Most of us haven't done much traveling for the past year and a half. And so this summer, Americans all over the country took the opportunity to go on trips. We hadn't seen Linda except on Zoom for about a year and a half since the pandemic. Anyway, while she was here, we decided, of course, to go to see NASA. I mean, what other iconic tourist site would you take a visitor to Houston? Okay, there's Kenny and Ziggy's. Maybe Herman Park or the Art Museum. Anyway, we went to NASA. And we took the tram ride to the astronaut training facility, where astronauts are training for future missions and scientists and engineers are developing the next generation of space exploration vehicles. And we also saw some pretty cool-looking robots. And we went through an exhibit that showed the history of NASA's exploration of space from the earliest rockets, the Mercury, the Gemini, and the Apollo spacecrafts that made history, with humans orbiting the Earth and then traveling to the moon and back. And the exhibit continued with the International Space Station, the unmanned missions to Mars, and the planning for the first human visit to the Red Planet. It's hard to believe that in one short decade, in the 1960s, we went from sending the first human being to orbit around the Earth to the first humans to walk on the moon. And speaking of that, it was exactly 50 years ago this evening that Apollo 15 made history with the first lunar rover excursion on the moon. NASA had actually engineered a car that could travel through the rough terrain of the lunar surface with its radical temperatures and deadly solar radiation. And it also had to be light enough and compact enough to fit inside the spacecraft. It was truly a remarkable engineering triumph. And all of this got me thinking, what would Moses say? What would Abraham say? Now, I know that's probably not the first question that you had in your mind, but I'm a rabbi, so you know. So Moses lived about 3,200 years ago, and we know that even people who lived hundreds of years later, maybe 2,500 years ago, still thought that the earth was the center of the universe. The sun, the moon, the planets, and the stars all orbited around the earth in concentric circles. If you have heard the expression seven heavens, it comes from the ancient belief that the sun, moon, and the 5 known planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, each were fixed in one of these spheres, making a total of 7. The Jewish tradition adopted this idea of 7 heavens as well, and it's found in the Talmud and Midrash. The idea that heaven is up there somewhere still seems to be popular to this day, even though we have sent astronauts up there, and we even sent the Hubble telescope up there. And that telescope allows us to see galaxies several billion light years away. We've seen the far reaches of the universe. And, of course, nowhere did anyone see angels floating around a divine throne. I hope I'm not bursting anybody's bubble tonight. Okay, so yes, Abraham, Moses, and even the rabbis of the Talmud 2,000 years ago believed the earth was the center of the universe and that God resided up in the heavens beyond the sun, moon, and stars. And that's just not how we understand the cosmos today. But that does not necessarily mean that there's no God or even that there's no heaven, God forbid. We just need to readjust our thinking about these matters. So almost exactly 52 years ago this evening was the first Apollo mission to land on the moon, Apollo 11. The lunar module of that Apollo spacecraft was nicknamed the Eagle, and it landed on a crater they called the Sea of Tranquility on the lunar surface on July 20th, 1969. Flight Commander Neil Armstrong radioed NASA the famous words, "Houston, Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed." And as he set foot on the lunar surface for the first time, he uttered perhaps the most often quoted words of the mission: "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." What is less well known is that his flight partner, Buzz Aldrin, was a devout Presbyterian. Before leaving the lunar module to explore the moon, Buzz had brought with him a communion kit from his church, and he took communion. Just before he did, he radioed this to Earth. I'd like to take this opportunity to ask every person listening in, whoever and wherever they may be, to pause for a moment and contemplate the events of the past few hours and to give thanks in his or her own way. Now, you'll notice that Aldrin did not make any reference to any religious prayers, and the reason for that was that NASA was actually in litigation at the time with an atheist who had filed a lawsuit complaining that during the Apollo 8 mission, the astronauts had read the first few lines of the first chapter of Genesis as they gazed at the planet Earth from space. Nevertheless, a few days later, on July 23rd, as the astronauts prepared for splashdown in the Pacific Ocean, the three spacemen gave short final speeches, and this is what Aldrin said at that time. "This has been far more than three men on a mission to the moon, more still than the efforts of a government and industry team, more even than the efforts of one nation. We feel that this stands as a symbol of the insatiable curiosity of all mankind to explore the unknown. Personally, in reflecting on the events of the past several days, a verse from Psalms comes to mind. When I consider the heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him?" 52 years later, here we are. And so tonight, I have some thoughts that I've reflected on about the amazing human achievements of NASA, as well as other nations' space programs. First, as I mentioned earlier, we all know that God's domain is not in some special place that our ancestors called heaven, as they pointed to the clear blue sky above us. There is no specific place in the universe where God resides. God has no body or physical form, according to our belief, and therefore does not and cannot exist in any particular location. Today, we might say that God exists outside the space-time continuum. But, thanks to our study of space, we can appreciate in a much more profound way the brilliance of God's creation in all its vastness, all its complexity, and all its sophistication. Looking at the Earth as the astronauts did in Apollo 8, it is no wonder they chose to read the opening verses of Genesis. By the way, the lawsuit was dismissed. Whether or not that was a valid First Amendment claim or not, it's irrelevant for how we Jews can choose to interpret the sight of our planet from space. God is not up there per se, but I am humbled and inspired and awestruck and amazed when I consider God's creation, every bit as much as our ancestor who wrote Psalm 8 that Buzz Aldrin quoted at the end of Apollo 11 mission. And this leads me to my second thought: why is God mindful of us? Here on this exquisite but fragile little globe in the vastness of space. In the early morning prayers we're supposed to recite each day, we recite a similar question. Master of all worlds, what are we? What is our life? Our goodness, our righteousness, our achievements, our powers, our victories. What shall we say in your presence? In your presence, our lives seem futile, and all is vanity. Surely, though, we are your people, adherents to your covenant, descendants of Abraham, whom you loved, the seed of Isaac, the congregation of Jacob, whom you renamed Israel and Yeshurun. Why is God mindful of us? Because God created humanity, as we learn from Genesis, to be God's agents in our world, with free will, so that we could choose our own destiny, with the ability to think, to create, to love, and to explore. We can use our imagination. We can tell stories. We can inspire others. We can forge relationships. We can build sacred communities. But all of these powers were given to humanity so that we can be God's agents in bringing love and compassion, hope and prosperity, freedom and dignity, justice and fairness into the world. When seen from outer space, the world looks so small. Our petty grievances become microscopic. From that perspective, from God's perspective, selfishness and greed, prejudice and bigotry are pointless, even ridiculous. Which leads to my third and last thought for this evening. We sent men, and they were all men back then, to the moon in the 1960s. There was a Cold War, a threat of nuclear war, a war in Vietnam. There were protests, sometimes violent ones, against racial prejudice and inequality. There were human-caused threats to the environment, which led then President Nixon to create the Environmental Protection Agency. Many Americans at the time wondered why we spent so much money to go to the moon when there were so many problems and so much poverty here at home. But going to the moon spun off many scientific advances, too numerous to discuss this evening. It inspired us to invent, to create, and to transform our world. And most importantly, it gave us that perspective on how small our planet is in the vastness of space. It is inspiring to live here in Houston, Texas, where President Kennedy launched the space program in September 1962, and a short drive away from NASA's Space Center Houston, which offers the public a glimpse into the brilliance of the work of our scientists and engineers. The coming decades will once again be a time of change and challenge, decades of hope and fear in an age of both knowledge and ignorance, as President Kennedy said 59 years ago. I hope that in the years ahead, we will continue to explore what is out there in space, but that also we will use that creative energy to find solutions to all of the challenges we still have here on Earth. We should use that image of the Earth to remind us of the fragility of our planet, to remind us of the pettiness of our disputes and conflicts, to remind us of the blessings we enjoy in God's creation. In short, to remind us of what is truly important and the mission that God has given to humanity to make this world as God intended it to be, as God described it at the end of creation, when God said, "V'hine tov ma'od," behold, it is very good. Shabbat shalom. And now we'll all rise as we give thanks to God with Aleinu, page 56.
Shabeach Adon HaKol Latekedu LaLeYosef Reshit Shelo Asanu Kegoyei Haratzot Velo Samanu Kemishpachot Adama Shelo Sam Pelkeinu Kahim V'Gohor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam V'Anachnu Kodim Umishtachavim Umodim Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Noteh Shamayim Ve'Yoser Haaretz U'Moshe Yikaro B'Shamayim Ima'al Ushemo, Ushemo, Ushemo Echad.
You may be seated. Those who are reciting the Mourner's Kaddish, it is found on page 58. And tonight, Beth Sharon extends its condolences to the families of Sandra Rappaport-Bayer, Barbara Joan Dunn, and Carrie Robinson, who were taken from us in the last few days and weeks. Mourner's Kaddish, page 58. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, B'alma divrach Hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'galav v'zman kariv yimru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei dekudsha b'rechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiron b'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom b'mramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. So we have one couple that I know of that's celebrating an anniversary this evening. Janice and Larry Odensky celebrating 49 years. Mazel tov. Where are you? Uh-oh, maybe you're watching from home. Anyways, you had one very good thing that has happened this year is that your daughter got engaged and is getting married in a few months. And it's been your silver lining to what has been a very difficult year. As many of us know, we've all had some tough times, but we are thrilled for you, we're thrilled for your daughter, and we're looking forward to celebrating her wedding and many more happy occasions in the future. Mazel tov to you from Beth Yeshurin. Mazel tov. We have a whole bunch of announcements because the high holidays are coming. So hopefully you have received something in the mail and via email about the coming high holy days. If you haven't received anything, please go to our website and sign up with your email address so you get our weekly emails, and or call the office during the week to make sure we have your mailing address. The high holiday tickets will be mailed to all members in good standing in mid-August. And the next deadline for the Yizkor book is due next Friday. You can complete either the paper or online form, which you can find on our website, so that our Yizkor book will be up to date for the holy days. If you haven't been receiving, well, I mentioned that already, you should call us. We continue to meet with our medical doctor advisors about COVID safety protocols. We are following their advice to keep us all safe as we enter the high holy day season. And we will continue to update our community, all of us here in the room and those of us watching online, with any changes that may be required. In the meantime, as we approach the holidays, we want to continue to encourage everyone who is eligible to get vaccinated. You've certainly heard about the new concerns about the Delta variant. Again, there was a new development this week. Hospital admissions and deaths due to COVID are overwhelmingly in unvaccinated individuals. The best way to defeat this virus is to get vaccinated. We're happy also to be able to visit the hospitals again, but we can't visit if we don't know who's there. So if you or a loved one is in the hospital, please contact our office, talk to Lisa Unsel or Abby Rotenberg, and let them know so we can arrange a visit from our clergy. We're continuing to register students for religious school, Sulam and Kehila High. If you have any questions or would like to register, please reach out to our religious school office. And we're also looking for madrichim, that is guides, student guides for our Sunday religious school classes. It is a great way to get service hours. We're looking for teens that are CBY members and are continuing their own Jewish education, either attending a Jewish day school or participating in Kehila High. If you're interested, or you know someone who might be interested, please contact Cheryl Eskowitz and, or Sarah Goldberg and let them know. And finally, you know about our Reynolds School project, Reynolds Elementary School we've partnered with since last holidays. They are an under-resourced school not too far from us, and it was a very, very difficult year for them, as you can imagine. We were very successful in providing crucial support for their students, their families, their teachers and staff. They were all very grateful and thankful for everything that we did for them, and now we're getting ready to help them again in the coming year. So if you can, if you hopefully got an email or can go online, there's donation opportunities to buy some supplies for the students and their families, or make a donation to the synagogue for the Reynolds Elementary School project. Or if you like to volunteer time, you can sign up to do tutoring or other volunteer projects for the school. Please check the email if you received it, and at the end of it is the place where you can make donations and sign up. We hope you'll continue to do that so we'll have another successful year with Reynolds Elementary School. And that's the end of my announcements. We're now going to bless children. We have a lot of children here, and hopefully some at home as well. So we're going to do a special blessing for them and then make Kiddush. Everybody, please, please rise. We're going to do so the blessing for these kids. For our girls, we're going to say, Yisimech Elohim Kesara Rivka Rachel Leah. May God make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And for the boys, we're going to say, Yisimcha Elohim Ke Ephraim V'Chem Menashe. May God make you like Ephraim and Menashe. And for all of us, I guess we can say, Yevarechecha Adonai V'Yishmerecha. May the Holy One bless you and watch over you. Ya'er Adonai Panav Elecha V'Yichunecha. May God's light shine upon you and be kind to you. Yisa Adonai Panav Elecha V'Yasem Lecha Shalom. May God always be mindful of you and grant you peace and happiness now and always. And now we're going to do Kiddush. Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. Shabbat kadsho b'ahava u'ratzon hinchilanu. Zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, kibu yom tehila lemikrai kodesh, zecher letzniat Mitzrayim, Ivanu v'charta, Tanu kidashta, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.